Have you ever felt, a really profound shift in your sense of belonging, maybe in your home country or just in how you see the world?
It's a powerful feeling, isn't it? Kind of disorienting.
Yeah.
Makes you rethink things.
Exactly. And today, we're taking a deep dive right into that experience. We're looking at how personal stories connect with, well, huge global events.
And we're doing that through two specific interconnected publications, American Refugee and Canadian Returnee.
Yeah, these sources give this really unique perspective. It's from a dual citizen, someone navigating not just borders, but identity, big political changes.
And, the power of just telling your own story independently.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack what it actually means to be an American refugee or a Canadian returnee.
Not just the legal terms, right? But the lived experience. What does it feel like?
We'll explore how one person's journey, their observations, kind of sparked a whole movement.
And the specific events that led to these platforms popping up.
And maybe most importantly, why these stories hit home for so many people, perhaps including you listening right now.
To do this, we've gathered insights straight from the source material, the About sections of both publications.
And also a specific article, American Refugee, Rights Under Siege in the U.S.
Yeah, these give us a direct line into the author's thinking, their definitions, and how this whole project evolved.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Where does this all start? The sources introduce this idea of a Canadian returnee.
Right. Someone who lived outside Canada, came back, and is sort of rediscovering their identity at home.
And the author of these publications is exactly that, a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen. They talk about seeing Canada with familiar and unfamiliar eyes after being away.
Which is a fascinating concept in itself.
It is. And what's compelling is how the author says it's not just moving back physically. It's a return to an identity that's, well, it's changed. What does the source material really emphasize about that rediscovery?
Well, the focus is really on rediscovery, adaptation, and reflection. That phrase comes up. So it's more than just, unpacking boxes. The sources suggest that even home feels different, maybe new, after living somewhere else.
Right. That makes sense.
And that dual perspective, it becomes this powerful lens for looking at the world. For this author, it meant seeing Canada differently.
How so?
Appreciating things maybe they took for granted before. Differences in how things are run, social vibes, cultural details, stuff you might miss if you never left. They talk about adapting to new rhythms, reflecting on how being away changed them, making them super aware of shifts in both Canada and the U.S.
So it really highlights how personal identity gets tangled up with place, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And how that shapes how you see politics, social issues, everything.
Okay, so that evolved perspective. Seeing Canada fresh after years away, that becomes super important when something major happens closer to their other home, the U.S.
Yeah, the sources are very clear about this pivotal moment. November 6, 2024, the re-election of Donald Trump, winning both the Electoral College and the popular vote.
And the author describes waking up to that news, feeling this unmistakable shift, something they say snapped inside them.
It sounds intense, not just a political result, but something deeply personal.
So how do the sources convey that intensity? What specific worries did that election tap into for the author?
There's a real sense of alarm in the writing. The author talks about watching the country re-elect someone who, well, in their view, had already weakened democratic institutions.
So it wasn't just a surprise, it was more like a confirmation of fears.
Exactly. It seems like it turned a growing worry into something urgent, a call to action almost. It brings up these deep anxieties about basic rights, about what it even means to be American anymore.
And the sources mention the personal connection, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They emphasize the author's strong ties, friends, family, memories in the U.S. That explains why this event, even experienced from Canada, hit so hard.
Right.
Their writing became this immediate way to process it all, asking, what does this mean for the place I still care about so much?
And that first piece of writing, published under the Canadian Returnee banner, it really took off, didn't it?
It really did. The author says it struck a nerve. Engagement shot up. People started reaching out.
Sharing their own feelings.
Yeah, their own fears, feeling displaced, alarmed. That feedback was, well, clearly crucial. It pushed the author to keep writing, to move beyond just personal stuff.
Into more direct political and social commentary.
Right. They started a podcast, shared updates on places like Substack Notes. It was this organic growth driven by readers.
It really showed the author wasn't alone in feeling this way, right? It tapped into something collective.
Definitely. A collective need for a space to talk about it.
But then, as Canadian Returnee grew, the author noticed something else happening.
Yeah, readers started asking for, a clearer separation, a specific place just for the American experience, especially for those feeling alienated.
And that's where American Refugee comes in.
That's exactly it. According to the material, it was a direct response to what the community was asking for.
That's a really key point, the community shaping the direction. It moves from one person's reflection to this shared space.
For dialogue, yeah, and for validating these experiences.
So then the sources define American Refugee, and this is where it gets quite pointed.
It does. The author makes it clear it's not just a casual phrase. They root it in the legal term.
Which is?
Someone who has fled the United States due to a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion.
Okay, that's the standard definition used in asylum cases.
Right. But the author stresses that while it is a legal term, it's also become, and this is their phrase, a lived reality for many.
Wow, that's a powerful statement, linking the legal definition to a lived experience within the country.
It is. And the reason given for the publication's existence is just as strong. It's called a response to a crisis.
A crisis that's redefining what it means to be an American, even for those of us who live beyond its borders.
Exactly. And the publication points to very specific concerns, linking them back to that idea of persecution.
Like what?
Things like fundamental rights are under siege, people being increasingly targeted for their race, religion, gender, political views.
Or even for simply existing in the wrong space. That's a direct quote.
Yeah. So how does the author, in the sources, connect those domestic concerns, things happening inside the U.S., to the legal idea of persecution we usually link with crossing borders?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do they bridge that gap?
Well, that article, American Refugee, Rights Under Siege in the U.S., dives into that. The argument drawn from the source is essentially this.
Okay.
When you see systematic targeting or the erosion of protections for certain groups based on race, gender, politics, whatever, within the U.S., it creates an environment inside the country that mirrors the conditions of that well-founded fear of persecution, usually discussed for asylum seekers leaving a country.
So the fear, the chilling effect, the threat to rights, it can happen without actually crossing a border.
That seems to be the core argument presented. It's about recognizing that feeling of insecurity, that threat, even in your own homeland.
And the source describes creating this publication as, what was the phrase?
A labor of love, born from necessity, shaped by experience, and fueled by the need to speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable.
So it's positioned not just as opinion, but as creating a necessary space for people feeling marginalized by these shifts.
Right, giving them a framework maybe to understand what they're experiencing.
Now, the sources paint a pretty clear picture of this perceived crisis and the need for this platform. Do they also touch on, other viewpoints? Or is the focus very much on this specific alarm?
The main focus, it's fair to say, is definitely on the author's perspective and the experiences of those who connect with it. That's clear.
Okay.
But it's important to see why. The whole point of these publications, as presented, is to be that dedicated space for people feeling this specific way, like their rights are genuinely under siege.
So it's not trying to be a balanced debate platform.
No, not really. It's more about amplifying a particular voice and community that might feel overlooked elsewhere. The About sections state it's for those who refuse to look away.
Right.
So while it doesn't explicitly argue with opposing views, its purpose is to carve out that essential space for this specific urgent perspective.
That makes sense. It's defining its audience clearly. And the sources really spell out who that audience is.
They do. For those who see what is happening and refuse to look away.
But also for people who feel like outsiders in their own country or maybe have even had to leave to live freely.
And importantly, it adds, it's for those who still have skin in the game.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, things like family ties, deep personal connections, or just feeling a moral responsibility towards the country's ideals, even if you're not physically there.
So it really emphasizes this isn't only for people who physically left, it's also for those outside the U.S. who are still deeply invested, deeply concerned.
Exactly. Feeling like an American refugee in spirit, perhaps, even without the legal status.
And the author's dual citizenship is key to all this, isn't it?
Absolutely central. It gives them that unique vantage point. They can appreciate Canada's strengths, social stability, whatever they perceive them to be.
Well, looking at the U.S. with this critical but still very personal eye.
Right. Viewing both places through those familiar and unfamiliar eyes isn't just poetry. It's the engine driving the whole thing.
It allows for that comparison, even if it's not always explicit.
Yeah. Comparing a democracy they see as relatively stable versus one they perceive as, well, facing serious challenges. That dual view makes their writing resonate with anyone grappling with shifting identities or belonging, no matter their nationality.
Something else that comes through really strongly from the sources is this focus on community and engagement.
Oh, definitely. The growth wasn't just the author writing things, it was about the reader response, the participation.
Every comment, share, subscription, it's framed as building something that matters.
Yeah, it's not passive. Reading becomes participating. It fosters this community around deep conversations, critical thinking, and personal storytelling.
So what does that tell us about maybe independent media or finding community when times feel turbulent?
I think it's a really potent model, especially now. In a media world often dominated by big outlets or clear partisan slants.
Uh-huh.
The sources emphasize that the author doesn't take the reader's time or attention for granted. There's this respect.
And an invitation to join in.
Exactly, through comments, support, whatever. It shows that when things feel uncertain, people often gather around authentic, independent voices. Voices that maybe articulate things they're feeling but haven't put into words.
And solidarity.
Yeah, and shared understanding. It proves that individual voices, when they connect and get support, can create these really vital spaces for dialogue and just thinking critically. It empowers readers.
From just consuming to actually participating.
Right. Shaping the conversation, finding collective strength.
And the move beyond just articles, adding podcasts, social commentary that shows a commitment too, does it?
It really does. It's about fostering that dialogue and reflection, not just putting information out there. Meeting people where they are, format-wise.
Yeah, reinforcing that sense of a growing, connected community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Let's recap some of the key things we've pulled from the sources today.
Sounds good.
We've explored how this author's dual citizenship and time abroad gave them this really unique perspective on both Canada and the U.S.
Right, that familiar and unfamiliar eyes idea.
We saw how a specific political event, the 2024 U.S. election described in the sources, acted as this major catalyst.
Turning personal reflection into these dedicated platforms, American Refugee and Canadian Returnee.
Addressing really pressing issues for people feeling displaced or seeing rights under threat in the U.S., according to the author's view.
And both publications really stand as examples of independent storytelling, building community, and thinking critically about identity and change.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Well, the sources are pretty direct. These platforms are for people who refuse to look away, who feel like outsiders, or who would just have skin in the game.
They really highlight the importance of dialogue, critical thinking, challenging assumptions, even when it's uncomfortable.
Showing how personal stories can shed light on bigger political and social realities.
And these platforms, growing through reader engagement, they really demonstrate how individual voices can build significant spaces for understanding and maybe even action.
The author's commitment, described as that labor of love born from necessity.
Shaped by experience and fueled by the need to speak the truth.
Yeah.
It's a compelling journey from personal observation to public engagement.
Definitely food for thought about civic action and independent voices today.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawing from all this. What does it truly mean to belong? Or, conversely, to feel like an outsider, especially now when national identities, fundamental rights, they seem so much in flux, so contested.
It's a huge question.
It is. And how might these personal stories, shared on platforms like American Refugee and Canadian Returnee, push us to maybe reevaluate our own connections, our connections to places, to values?
When we see things ourselves with new eyes.
Yeah.
Familiar and unfamiliar at the same time.
Exactly. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.